What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Well, we have to react to the big D-backs news of the day. Jordan Montgomery to the Arizona Diamondbacks.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? Always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. We are, of course, going to be reacting to Jordan Montgomery coming to the Arizona Diamondbacks because, as they say, if you can beat them, join them, because that's what Montgomery did. And then, of course, we'll also talk about expectations for this upcoming season. Opening day just 2 days away, so I want to talk about expectations for the 2024 Arizona Diamondbacks, and we'll wrap up the show by talking about Paul Sewald's injury. But I just want to say thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube, so please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. We got a couple days left. We are very close to 1,000 subscribers, so please, please, please pound that subscribe button. Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use code all lowercase LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Now, let's get into the big news of the day. Jordan Montgomery to the D-backs. It's like a 1-year, $25 million deal. Second year is a vesting option that can go up to another $25 million. So Jordan Montgomery now, the highest paid Arizona Diamondback. Previously, that title was held by Eduardo Rodriguez. So kind of a fun time for the D-backs. Your two highest paid players are the two guys who signed this free agency. That means the D-backs are spending money this offseason. Ken Kendrick has been putting his money where his mouth is and has been spending money. He said coming off the World Series, we were going to take that extra revenue and put it back on this team, put it back into the team, right? Put it back onto the on-the-field product. And that's what Ken Kendrick has done. So quick round of applause for Ken Kendrick. You paid out money, $20 million a year for Eduardo Rodriguez. You signed Jordan Montgomery right on the heels of opening day. Best arm still on the market. $25 million to you. You signed Jock Peterson. You signed Randall Grichuk. You traded for Eugenio Suarez. You re-signed Lourdes Gurriel. You had yourself a fantastic offseason if you're the D-backs. I was giving the D-backs an A offseason right after. What was the last signing of the offseason? Probably Randall Grichuk. I was like, after that, already an A offseason. You got two people to play your DH. You got Erod in your rotation. You upgraded third base. Like, every hole was filled. And the D-backs said, nah, we're not just going to fill holes. We're now going to stack talent on top of talent. And that's what this Jordan Montgomery signing was. Stacking talent on top of talent, because I do not know how the D-backs pulled this move off. We know recently, as we discussed on a podcast this week, that the D-backs name has been floating around in the Jordan Montgomery market, right? There's been rumors swirling that maybe the D-backs were interested on Montgomery, but it always felt like a long shot. Like, I always had at like 5% or less, because I was like, the Yankees, Oscar Cole, like, why wouldn't they sign him? Or the Orioles, who don't have a ton of high ceiling pitchers after Corbin Burns, like Jordan Montgomery would make sense in that rotation. I just felt like there were other teams that needed Montgomery more than the D-backs. He felt more like a luxury than a necessity for the Arizona Diamondbacks. But sometimes luxuries are good, because Jordan Montgomery now comes to the D-backs. He pulls a reverse Kevin Durant, because Kevin Durant, right? He loses to the Warriors in a 7-game series and then joins them. And then that starts the whole Warriors dynasty with KD, right? Montgomery beat the D-backs in the World Series and said, you know what? I would rather go play for that team. The vibes are better. I don't know what his reasoning was. I don't know why the Rangers didn't re-sign Jordan Montgomery. Maybe they're going to be a one-year wonder, but it feels like the D-backs are going to be around for a while, because Montgomery, he's coming in. Yes, it's a one-year deal, but the core for the D-backs feels set. And for at least the 2024 season, the D-backs are going all in on this squad. Montgomery, I think, is someone that's going to fit perfectly in the D-backs rotation. Will he be the number 3 or the number 4? I don't know, because now with how the rotation stacks up for the D-backs, you got Gallen, Kelly, Montgomery, and Erod. Like, I don't know how you stop that rotation. Those are 4 quality arms. I mean, Zach Gallen's an ace, and then you can make an argument. Kelly through Erod could be number 2/number 3 starters in every rotation in baseball, but D-backs are now going to have a 4-man playoff rotation of Gallen, Kelly, Erod, and Jordan Montgomery. Like, that's 2 righties, 2 lefties. I don't know if Merrill Kelly all of a sudden gets bumped to like number 3 just so it could be righty, lefty, but I just love the fact that that's your 4-man rotation. Like, when you think about the D-backs last year on their way to the World Series, like, your number 3 starter was Brandon Pfaadt, who, if he didn't step up in the postseason, the D-backs were going to go home early. Brandon Pfaadt was a man on a mission for the D-backs in the playoffs. He was someone that really struggled in the regular season, turned it on in the postseason, and if he didn't do that, D-backs were not going to go to the World Series. So the fact that you needed him to be your number 3, the fact that you needed him to step up as your number 3 starter just to make it to the World Series, like, it felt kind of desperate at the time, because if Brandon Pfaadt wasn't doing what he was doing as the number 3 starter as a rookie, the D-backs had no chance to go deep into the postseason, because entering the playoffs, you're like, the D-backs rotation just isn't deep enough. But thankfully, Pfaadt was able to step up, because in that number 4 starter spot was a bullpen day, right? In the postseason, D-backs are starting games with like Joe Mantiply and Miguel Castro was coming out to get multiple innings. Like, think about how weak your playoff rotation is. Like, think about how crazy it is that the D-backs got to a World Series with a rookie as your number 3 starter who struggled for the whole year, and the bullpen as your number 4 starter. Now, going into the postseason, your number 3 starter is going to be like Erod or Jordan Montgomery, and then they're also going to be your number 4 starter. Then Pfaadt's going to be like your long reliever out the pen, spot starter. Like, your rotation now is absolutely devastating when you look at it from a playoff perspective. If you just look at it as a regular season perspective, like Brandon Pfaadt, the expectation levels on him now so much lower. He can play a little bit more carefree baseball as he really tries to find himself now as the number 5 starter. Like, we have this whole spring training of who's going to be the number 5 starter for the D-backs. It's going to be Brandon Pfaadt, with Jordan Montgomery now entering the mix. So D-backs rotation is stacked. Jordan Montgomery as a pitcher is someone that has gotten better every single season. 2021, 3.83 ERA. 2022, 3.48. 2023, 3.2. This is someone that has gone better the last 3 seasons. 188 innings pitched last season. Is a bit of a workhorse. Not a big strikeout guy, but does have a 20% K rate over the last few seasons. Walk rate below 7%. Like, his walk rate actually last year, 4.9%. The hard contact stats, not bad at all. So from a pitching run prevention standpoint and just a ceiling standpoint, Jordan Montgomery can do both. Now, is he a guy that's going to overpower you? No, he's a sinker ball pitcher, but he's a sinker ball guy that can throw that sinker in the around 93 to 94. Like, he throws a hard sinker, inducing contact. Jordan Montgomery, he's a different kind of flavor than some of the other pitchers in this rotation. So I just love the balance of this rotation. Each guy can attack you different. And so when you get into a playoff series, I think the mix of pitchers that the D-backs have with the versatility of their pitching arsenal, really, really strong once you get to the playoffs. Now, Jordan Montgomery, he's going to need a little bit of time to ramp up, right? It's going to take him a few weeks to get ready for the regular season. So D-backs already announced before the signing that their rotation the first time through will at least be Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Tommy Henry, Brandon Pfaadt, and Ryan Nelson. I think that rotation is fine, because once your rotation gets healthy, my God, again, how are you going to stop Gallen, Kelly, Montgomery, Erod? That rotation is absolutely stacked with Pfaadt as your number 5. And I actually want to know, like, did the D-backs pull off this signing as a response to what the rest of the the rest of the division has done, because recently, the last few weeks, we've seen Dylan Cease get traded to the Padres. We've seen the Giants sign Blake Snell. Like, the other teams in the NL West have gotten better in their rotation. So we're the D-backs like, you know what? We need to upgrade our rotation just a little bit more. We can't fall behind in the NL West arms race. So they signed Jordan Montgomery to maybe as a response to what the other teams did in the NL West. But regardless, love the Jordan Montgomery signing. Love that Mike Hazen has never ever gone complacent at all this season. He's been aggressive at every turn. Every time you thought the D-backs were done, like after he signed Jock Peterson, you've been like, okay, that's the D-backs DH. Then it was like, no, we're actually going to add a righty complement to Jock Peterson. Like, every time you thought Mike Hazen might be done with this offseason, he just pulls off another move. So very grateful for Mike Hazen with his aggressiveness. Grateful to Ken Kendrick for finally putting his money where his mouth is, and grateful for Jordan Montgomery for choosing the right team from the World Series matchup between the D-backs and the Texas Rangers. Now I want to talk about expectations for the D-backs this upcoming season. But before we get into that conversation, I first need to talk to you guys about the greatest fantasy sports app that I like to play right now, and it's called Prize Picks, because football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. My favorite thing to do is pick LeBron points, pick LeBron rebounds, and if that hits, I feel good with money in my pocket. If you want money in your pocket, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app, use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Sorry if I don't sound the best today. My nose is runny. I've been under the weather today. Not even supposed to record a podcast today, but after I saw that Jordan Montgomery signing, I was like, we got to tough it out for the Locked On D-backs audience, because this news was too big not to talk about. But now I want to talk about expectations for the D-backs this upcoming season, because after a signing like Jordan Montgomery, you're going to have major expectations, and they're coming off the World Series, right? So you're coming off the World Series appearance. You plugged in all your holes. You didn't just plug in all your holes. You stacked talent on top of the holes that you've plugged in. So this D-backs team is absolutely loaded. They actually have one, if not the best rotation in baseball. Like, I think the D-backs are now in the argument for best rotation in the sport, because I don't know who has a stronger 1 through 4 than the D-backs. I saw MLB.com do like a rotation ranking. Brian Wu is their #4 starter. Is he better right now than an Erod or Jordan Montgomery? I don't know. I saw the Braves at like #2, like Charlie Morton. Are you taking him? Are you taking Chris Sale and Charlie Morton over Erod and Jordan Montgomery? I don't know about that. So the D-backs are definitely in the argument for best rotation in baseball. So with that being the case, what is the expectations for the D-backs in the 2024 season? I think it's very simple. I don't think it's championship or bust, but definitely deep run or bust. You have to make us feel good through the regular season and through the postseason. I don't think the D-backs have to win the World Series for my feelings to be validated from this offseason and whatever happens throughout the year. But I do think the D-backs have to play well in the regular season, secure a playoff spot, and then have a good postseason run as well, and look good in the postseason, look competitive, and show everyone that last year was not a fluke, because the D-backs are coming off arguably their greatest offseason ever. Like, you can truly make the case this is the best D-backs offseason of all time. Like, the amount of talent that they acquired and retained this offseason, like, you're bringing back all of last year's core minus Tommy Pham, and then you added the Suarez's, you added the Montgomerys and the Erods and the Jocks and the Grinches. So like, this is honestly one of the best off seasons that the D-backs have ever had. They filled every checklist and then some that they had entering the offseason. So when you do that, I think it is going to raise the expectation level that you have for yourself. You're coming off the World Series and you got better. There's no reason that this D-backs team entering this year shouldn't be a World Series contender, right? I'm not saying it's World Series or bust, but they should be a championship contender. That's the feeling we should have from the D-backs as they enter the postseason, because as it currently stands, this is their highest payroll ever at $175 million. Ken Kendrick has done his job. He's put the money into this D-backs team. So now they have to do their job. You can't have 1 year of good success and then the very next year when the owner actually spends money on you, you suck. Because guess what? If you suck this year, Ken Kendrick is never going to spend money on you ever again. So the D-backs have to meet expectations this year. And for me, meeting expectations is just doing what the Phillies have been doing the last couple of years, right? Because when I look at this D-backs team, they're loaded in the rotation. Like I said already, one of the best rotations in all of baseball. They're 1 through 4 is nasty. And then let's say one of those guys gets hurt, like Brandon Pfaadt stepping up to be your number 4 starter, like you're going to be fine. Your bullpen is solid. Like, is it elite? No. Paul Sewald's hurt right now, but when it's healthy, you trust a Ginkel and a Sewald as your 8th, 9th man. You like a Ryan Thompson as a setup guy. There's some other intriguing options in your pen, like a Luis Frias. So your pen is at least solid right now, right? You don't hate your bullpen. You look at the lineup, as deep as ever. This is one of the deepest D-backs lineups ever. 7, 8 men deep. Like, if you just go on RotoChamp, I don't think RotoChamp is going to be accurate. We'll see, but they have like Lourdes Gurriel's like the projected like number 7 or 8 hitter for the D-backs. Like, that's absolutely insane. Your manager, Torey Lovullo, empowering. He puts his players, I was going to say always in the best positions. You know, I've had some trouble with X's and O's with Torey Lovullo, but you have to admit he empowers his players to be the best versions of themselves. He will allow you to grow as a person and as a personality, and I truly respect that from Torey Lovullo. Your GM, Mike Hazen, he's not afraid to make moves at all. So when I take all those ingredients together, like, those are the ingredients of a World Series contender. And if it doesn't play out like that, this season will be very disappointing. That's why I'm saying they have to just be akin to what the Phillies have done the last couple of years. The D-backs don't need to win 108 games to be considered successful. They just need to be Phillies-esque, which is like, if the D-backs won 89 games, secured a strong 89 games for a wild card spot, right? If they secured a wild card spot, 89 games, looked good throughout the regular season, one of the better scoring offenses, still created chaos and havoc on the bases, maybe a few more home runs considering you added more power this offseason. Like, if their offense looks better from last season, if their pitching looks better from last season in the regular season, they have a positive run differential entering the postseason, and they have a secured wild card spot, I would be happy from that, from the regular season. And then once we get into the postseason, be like the Philadelphia Phillies, where you're like, the Phillies are a good regular season team, but we know they're built for the playoffs. I think it's the same for the D-backs. I think the D-backs are going to be around 88 to 90 wins, but I think they're a team built for the postseason. If the D-backs get there, we need to see a deep postseason run. Now, if you face a team like, again, the Braves or Dodgers in the divisional series, like, yeah, it's going to be tough to beat those teams, but the D-backs have the talent to do it. They should hopefully make it to at least the NLCS, because that's what the Phillies have done, right? The Phillies have run into some really tough juggernauts in the postseason, but they've been so good at home that it carries them to the NLCS. And for the D-backs, we need that same vibe. We need that same moxie. And hopefully it's at Chase Field. If the D-backs can pack out Chase Field like the Phillies do Philadelphia, that would be great for this franchise. I don't think we're there just yet. But for the most part, when we talk about expectations for this D-backs franchise, just be like the Phillies. 88 wins, a wild card, look good in the regular season, but really make your money in the playoffs, because that's what we're going to care about the most. The D-backs were a young team last year that took the league by surprise in the first half and in the playoffs, but it won't be the same this year. Everyone is going to give the D-backs their very best, and that's not something that this franchise is used to. So for the D-backs, go out there, show everyone last year wasn't a fluke, and show that you're even more hungry for a World Series this upcoming season. Now I want to talk about updated rotation rankings in the NL West and what's the plan with the Paul Sewald injury. But before we get into that, if you think the D-backs are officially going to win the World Series post Jordan Montgomery signing, then why not go to FanDuel Sportsbook and place a little futures bet down, because say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. My favorite thing to do is the same game parlay. Now that baseball season is back in full swing, I like to take the D-backs money line over on Corbin Carroll total bases and Ketel Marte RBIs. That 3-leg parlay pays out at plus 300. I'm going to put some money down. If you want to put some money down, just visit fanduel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down those nets. All right. Let's get back into the lock. Whoa, I pressed the wrong thing. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's talk about the Paul Sewald injury, and let's update our rotation rankings in the NL West. I first want to update the rotation rankings in the NL West because, to be honest, I've had the Dodgers as the #1 rotation for a while now, whenever we've done this, but I think it might be time to change that. I don't think it's crazy to say the D-backs now have the best rotation in the NL West, because you look at the Dodgers rotation, Glass now is still stud. But would you say he cancels out with Zach Allen? Considering Zach Allen can actually pitch a full season, I'm going to be generous and say they cancel out. Your #2, Yamamoto. Yamamoto's supremely talented, but again, a question mark. So right now, I'm going to say he cancels out with the Merrill Kellys of the world. Then you look at your #3 and #4. It's going to be who? Bobby Miller? James Paxton? Gavin Stone? I honestly don't even know who the #3 or #4 is for the Dodgers right now. So when I just look at it like that, like, yeah, you'll get Kershaw back at some point, Walker Buehler too. But as it stands right now, Kershaw is old. Even if he comes back, he's still old. I don't know how he's going to look off injury. I don't know how Walker Buehler is going to look off injury. Like, there's just bigger question marks with a Kershaw and with Walker Buehler than with an Erod and Jordan Montgomery. So I think it's fair to say the D-backs now have the best rotation in the NL West. Let's be for real. Bobby Miller had a better season last year than Brandon Pfaadt, but when it mattered the most, Pfaadt was better than Bobby Miller. So 1 through 5, you can actually say the D-backs might have a stronger rotation than the LA Dodgers. So I'll put D-backs 1, Dodgers 2. #3, I'm going to put the San Francisco Giants. Blake Snell, Logan Webb, nasty 1-2 duo. Really close with the Padres. Padres, Joe Musgrove, and Dylan Cease. I just don't think it is as high of a ceiling as Webb and Blake Snell, but I think it's super close. I think it's those pitchers after the top 2 for the Giants and Padres. For the Giants, I just see higher upside with the rest of the Giants rotation. Could get Robbie Ray back second half of the season. Alex Cobb could come back after a couple months. Kyle Harrison, very intriguing pitching prospect. Jordan Hicks, very good reliever, being converted to a starter. I just think there's more intriguing options for the Giants in their rotation. I do like the Michael Kings of the world for the Padres, and I think the Johnny Brito's are interesting, but I just don't think I trust Yu Darvish at this point of his career. So I would have Giants 3, Padres 4, and then the Rockies, of course, #5. But now let's talk about the Paul Sewald injury, because it looks like he has an oblique strain. Don't know how long he's going to be out for. Could be a few weeks. But what should the D-backs do without Paul Sewald? Because right now, with Jordan Montgomery and Erod both hurt, the D-backs might need to lean into their bullpen a little bit more to start the regular season. Now, we will have Ryan Nelson, Tommy Henry, and Brandon Pfaadt. Pfaadt was always going to be a starter, but Ryan Nelson and Tommy Henry will continue to be starters in the rotation with Montgomery and Erod out. And with all that being said, the bullpen might need to work a little bit harder at the start of the regular season, because it is possible the Tommy Henrys and the Ryan Nelsons of the world are just done after 3.2 innings pitched, right? So a lot of question marks right now for the D-backs bullpen with Paul Sewald injury, but I do like the fact that the D-backs can now look at more of their intriguing pitching options, right? You get to see a little bit more of your battle for the number 5 starter with the Ryan Nelsons and the Tommy Henrys. You can keep the Luis Friases on the roster if he was a bubble guy, or maybe call up like a Justin Martinez or something. Like, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but you can at least play around a little bit more with some of those. You can at least play around a little bit more with some of those arms they have in AAA stashed away if you want to call one of those guys up to see what they have for you, which I think could be a pretty intriguing time right now for the D-backs. This could almost be like extended spring training, because with Erod, Sewald, and Jordan Montgomery out, you have a chance to look more at your youngsters. And maybe this is a good opportunity for them to get their feet wet right now at the beginning of the regular season before the games really start ramping up. And then when the team gets healthy, they move kind of into the background, right? But just in case, if there's an injury down the line, second half of the season, those guys are ready for the moment because of the stuff that they went through in the first half of the year. So this could be a good opportunity for the D-backs to continue scouting their youngsters, and for those youngsters to get more opportunity and potentially play themselves into bigger opportunities in the second half of the season. So don't like to see Paul Sewald go down. I had him as a dark horse to lead the National League in saves this upcoming season. Don't think that's going to happen anymore. If Sewald is out for a few weeks, I think I want Kevin Ginkel. I think all D-backs fans want Kevin Ginkel to be the guy. He was really, really good last year for the D-backs. Good strikeout numbers, really low ERA. Ginkel could have been better with runners in scoring position, but for the most part, it was the best Kevin Ginkel we've seen in a while. 2.48 ERA, 65 innings pitched, 9.6 strikeouts per 9. Really strong season. So he should be the D-backs closer. I'm just scared Torey Lovullo might get crazy and might be like, you know what, Scott McGough, you have closing experience. Let's put you as the closer. Now, Scott McGough is better in save situations than non-save situations, but even with that being said, if Kevin Ginkel is not the closer with Paul Sewald being out, that would make me very disappointed. But D-backs can at least hold it down until Sewald gets back. They have a lot of pitching options already on the roster and in AAA. So I think they should be fine with Paul Sewald. Hopefully he comes back fully healthy. And then hopefully we get this D-backs team fully healthy, because rotation's banged up, Gritchick is banged up, bullpen a little banged up. D-backs starting the season a little bit banged up, but maybe those warts will only make them stronger as the season progresses. Now that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses. Response to what the